I'm sitting here with Marc Aniballi, the product designer for Imusify. And yeah, we are currently on the plane flying from Osaka to Tokyo, and we'll talk about blockchain, distributed applications, and the underlying technology that enables Imusify to function. And Marc, can you first start by telling a little bit about yourself and your experience so that we know a bit more about your background?
Wow. Yeah, I've been doing product design, I suppose, with technology for over 25 years. Just the technologies underlying the designs have changed over time. So it started with computers and integrating applications, and then it moved to the internet and the web, and then it moved to large-scale systems, and then it moved to apps and digital presences and web-based applications. And over time, it became apparent to me that blockchain applications were likely to become something interesting, so I started studying those about 2015. And by the time 2017 rolled around, I was comfortable that I understood them well enough that I could start designing systems that were using the benefits of blockchain. And I started looking around for projects to get involved in, and that's when I came across Imusify.
Okay, maybe just a few highlights from your career. What are the, let's say, 3 things that you're most proud of so far?
Well, let's see. I was working as a consultant for Microsoft, and management told me that there was no way you would ever sell a multi-million-dollar contract to the government of Ontario in Canada, where I live, without going through an RFP.
RFP being just for
request for proposal,
okay.
So, which means you have to basically put it out there so that anybody can bid on it. And the point that would be there being was that any competitor consulting group would have undercut Microsoft's price because Microsoft didn't negotiate.
Okay.
So we'd never get a deal like that. And over six months, I've networked inside the government and made the case that there was no point in going to an RFP because this consulting contract, which was multi-year, multi-million, could only be ever executed by Microsoft. No partner could ever do it because they don't have the inside track at Microsoft. So we did that proposal, and 6 months later I was sitting at the desk with the management team that said I couldn't do it, watching them sign the deal.
Wow, awesome.
So that felt pretty good. And that wasn't really anything other than personal networking, but within the stakeholders who actually understood the technologies, what was happening, and not the management teams who don't. Right? So that was how I got it. It was a bottom-up kind of motion. And then there was when I was in Dubai, and I got headhunted by a company there to come on as their CTO and architect a ERP system that used a single database. Now this is before blockchain. Now that we have blockchain, this would have been a great blockchain use case if we could get the transaction volume down. But the idea was to create a monolithic database of all automobile parts in the world and where they were, and not just whether they were Mercedes or GM parts, because most of their parts are all the same. They're just in different boxes, but the actual part inside is the same part. And we actually had a database built in India that would allow you to cross-reference, so that if you were looking for a Mercedes part, we could tell you what the Fiat, the Renault, the GM, the Ford part numbers were for that same exact part. And we were going to build this out as a service to retail automotive industry, where they could tap into this thing, put their inventory on it, and then have access anonymously to the inventory of everybody in their region. So if you needed a part and you're in Dubai for your customer's Mercedes, but you don't have the part, and you don't want to wait 6 weeks for it to get there from Germany, you order from the system, and it might show up by a bike courier from the dealership just down the road, which is a Ford dealership.
Understood that.
And you would pay the Ford price. Your customer would probably pay the Mercedes price, but he's happy because the customer gets their service right away and doesn't have to wait. And there was a whole bunch. There was a 20-page document just on the ways it would change the industry and make things more efficient. The problem was that we started this project in 2000, and by the time we were ready to go for second round funding, which was, the first round was huge, but we needed second round funding in 2001. I don't know if you recall the .com bust.
I think everybody remembers that one.
Or, you know, that other thing that happened in 2001.
Yeah,
it pretty much made the Arab world persona non grata.
Yeah.
So we ended up basically having to fold because no one wanted to invest, and no one wanted to deal with the Arab world.
Okay, understood.
That was unfortunate, but there you go.
Okay, the third one?
The third one would be BlackBerry. I
Okay.
got recruited by a US company to go run a project for them with BlackBerry, based in Waterloo, but also in Texas and Singapore. And the company was based in Atlanta and San Francisco, and their project team was in Athens, and the dev team was in Kiev.
So you already had a distributed, lean organization back then.
This was my first fully distributed role, and it was absolutely wonderful. I absolutely loved it. But we were building a custom ad server for the BlackBerry Messenger platform that we had the specs for, but they needed to be refined. And then once we got through the design phase, then I then took on the program management role, building it out. We got through 3 full version releases, adding constant functionality, integrating with their ERP systems, which was kind of fun.
Okay, cool. But returning back, for example, to the use case that you mentioned for the car dealership, and that it would be a great blockchain use case.
Yes.
Maybe we can start here by explaining what blockchain technology is, and explain why is it disruptive, what we can do with it that could not be done before this event.
So there's just several factors that make blockchain really interesting, but fundamentally you have to remember that a blockchain is a database. It is a write-only database, if you want to think of it that way. I mean, you can always read from the database, but this is one where you can write, but you can only add. You can never remove,
subtract any information.
Right. So and you can't modify. So you have to think about what you're building, and from a use case perspective, you have to say to yourself, what does it look like today, my business, or my project, or my product, and then what's it going to look like in 10 years? The guys the people who put together Bitcoin didn't care, because Bitcoin wasn't meant to be something that was going to last. It was meant to be a proof that this could be done. And yes, it succeeded wildly. But the size of the database becomes prohibitive. And while disk space isn't really a problem these days, and probably will never be a problem in terms of storage, seems to evolve faster than our need for it. Network, on the other hand, does not evolve faster than our need for it. We will happily consume more bandwidth today than there is. When you're dealing with a blockchain, your database has copies of itself everywhere. So you have to worry about the size of the file, because sooner or later your file is going to get extremely big, and when someone wants to join your network, they have to copy that file onto their platform, their location, if they want to interact with it on a regular basis. If they just want to watch it, you don't have to download it. But if you want to interact with it, you have to have a copy. And when you get really big databases, someone falls out of, or some section of the world falls out of sync, catching up gets much more difficult as the database gets larger and larger. Also, your transaction volume over time, ideally, you're going to grow. You're going to want more people to use your platform. You run up against the problem of the size of the amount of data that is being generated on your monolithic database. The monolithic being a single one point of contact database. When you're dealing with a monolithic database and your transaction volumes go up, sure, it's growing, the database is growing in size, but also the communication between all the copies of this database, which is fundamental to what a blockchain does. You have to have lots of copies. The communication between them now has to get higher and higher. Sooner or later you run up against this wall that the internet is only so fast.
So this is known as the scalability issue, basically.
This is part of this. There's several factors to scalability. This is one of them. What they call propagation delay. The time it takes for all the stuff you did to be communicated to all the nodes on your network. in real time. So if people think about that, they say, okay, so 10 transactions per second. They think, well, that sounds good. Sure, it sounds good if you're not doing a lot of transactions in the sense that your users, for example, maybe they only do a transaction a day.
Though it's often mentioned that one of the cool use cases is, for example, micropayments, building the so-called Internet 2.0, where people could directly pay for each service, or basically pay as you go for everything through micropayments.
Sure, micropayments are fantastic because when you build a crypto token, and it doesn't have to be its own currency, you could just make it an allegory for an existing currency, much like Tether did. Whether you do your own or an allegory, you're able to set the number of decimal places you can go to, because you're not restricted by the formal banking systems of the world, which says, I'm sorry, but in the US we have pennies, and that's as small as it gets. You can have micro pennies, nano pennies, pico pennies if you want. I'm not sure what you would use them for, but micro and mini pennies would definitely be useful. Think of our use case, for example, where we're distributing streams of music. You don't want to charge a penny for that stream. You want to charge about a half a penny for that stream. So if you're going to pay in US dollars, then you have to wait for your customer or you have to ask your customer to pay a penny, and then they can listen to 2 songs. Or you could say, no, we'll figure it out on your behalf. You listen to the songs, and we'll just debit your account by a half a penny.
Okay, so let's maybe explain what Imusify does and how it utilizes blockchain to do that.
Okay, so the vision of Imusify is to fully disintermediate the music industry. Take it back to the busking days, if you will, right? A musician wanted to make money, a musician performed. Along came recording, and it was a brand new tech and very expensive, so you needed collective activity, which in the 20s and 30s and all that was the form of a record company that got some investors together, funded the acquisition of the equipment and the skill sets that were needed, and then brought in artists and effectively rented this service to them for a cut of the proceeds of any recordings that were made. And in the time, that was the only way you could do it. As time has evolved, and I'm sure everybody in the audience knows, digital recording became something you can do in your home, and anybody can do it. And if they can't, can't quotes do it, they can learn. There's YouTube videos out there, there's websites out there that will teach you everything you need to know, and you can get the software. There's free software out there in a lot of cases, but if you want to go professional, the software's there and it's not that expensive.
But also along came the ability to distribute music globally, which effectively decreased its value.
The internet did 2 things. Well, PCs did, or computers being ubiquitously distributed, did one thing, and that was it allowed you to digitize music and then make infinite copies. So your production costs for recordings dropped to 0.
Yeah.
Aside from the time and effort it took you to create the recording, but once you created it, you could make infinite copies for free, effectively. The internet comes along and makes distributing that for free possible. So production cost is 0, your distribution cost is 0. What's the record company do? Well, they're pretty much at the point now where all they really do is marketing. They do some funding of production, but even that is now being left to the artists to handle, and they handle just the promotion and and that kind of work. But as the advent of social networking has happened, even that now can be effectively done by anybody. And building of networks does not have to be done by high-powered networking execs or high-powered record execs. It can be done by guys who just build community around their social presence. And these people can act in the same role as a record label, but at a much lower cost, because they don't have to have the infrastructure of a record label.
And the fundamental role or vision of Imusify is to build on all these technology and integrate them in such a way that will return value to music.
Well, exactly. The whole Napster era, right, where music was you could digitize it, and now you had the internet, so you could distribute it for free, and everyone said, great, I'm just going to copy all the music I know, and I'm going to upload it to Napster so everybody can have copies of the music that I love. And with everybody doing that, literally the entire lexicon of recorded music was available on Napster for free. Of course, that doesn't really help the people who are creating the music very much.
And it seems that it doesn't help the evolution of music itself either.
Well, if a musician can't make a living as a musician, they'll stop being a musician. They'll maybe be a musician, as a hobby, but they won't pursue it as a career, as a vision quest, if you will, which is where you get the best creative results. Is when people that's all they do.
So if we consider, for example, the work Outliers, the famous 10,000 hour rule, to be a great musician, you need to invest a lot of your time, and that kind of translates into money.
Right. I mean, most people work 2,000 hours a year. So it takes you 5 years full time to become capable of being what we would call competent. Of people who have done that,
there's only a few.
There's only a few who will become maybe a star. There's lots of people who don't have to be stars. On our platform, we call them collaborators. Session musicians or tour musicians. They're still making a great living, but they're not the spotlight.
Yeah, understood.
Right? But you need them too. Otherwise, tours don't happen.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Or recordings just don't have that fire. All right? And we were looking at that and we're saying, okay, so Napster was a damaging effect, but it was also a lesson.
What technology can do to an asset that suddenly came from physical to digital form, utilizing all
the minute you go digital, production is free, distribution is free, and the only value exchange that should be happening is between the consumer of the asset and the creator of the asset. It's not what's happening.
And this is what Imusify basically stands for, direct peer-to-peer from an artist to the consumer.
Exactly. So when we say, okay, if promotion is arguably free, or at least a negotiable amount of money, and there are a lot of people out there who are happy to negotiate with you for how much you're going to get paid to promote my event, promote my record, whatever. And
so let's try and break the Imusify platform into specific function, and then check out the technology behind it, how it powers those functions. So if I understand correctly, there is micropayments governed by smart contracts between individuals.
Yes.
Then there's a streaming service, which is kind of linked to this. Then there is crowdfunding.
Well, maybe we should tackle this a little differently. Micropayments is a function.
It's a function.
Right. It's if you will, it's like an electrical system, right?
Okay.
It's not interesting. Everyone has one.
Okay, understood.
Right? It exists. It is a feature of the digital nature of the platform, right? Actually, to be honest with you, PayPal can deal in micropayments. They just don't, right? Because it doesn't make any sense to them to do so. But they could, because they're a digital platform.
Yeah.
And you can, in digital world, represent a dollar as 10 million micropennies. You could. Why would you? But in our world, it makes sense, and so we use an analog to currency internally to make that work. So that's plumbing, electricity. Your streaming service, that's actually something that's interesting, because that's a feature that actual people interact with. So in our platform, an artist uploads a piece of music, and ideally we hope millions of artists upload pieces of music, and obviously many pieces. Each piece that they upload runs us past the verification process, and we verify that it's theirs.
So that would be essentially one of the first and most important improvements compared to, for example, SoundCloud or Spotify.
Or any of them. Well, Spotify is different because Spotify doesn't actually allow artists to upload to Spotify.
Yeah, okay, understood. They go through labels.
They go through labels and digital library services and all that stuff. And by the way, we will connect to digital library services and labels if they want to provide their library to our users. That will work exactly the same way, though. The difference is that when they connect to us, they're going to have a whole library of songs with one smart contract that says all the money goes to that service.
unless they potentially want to facilitate the process of distributing money, which would basically allow them to set up this agreement in such a way that they directly distribute to artists and just take their cut or something.
They could do that too. That would be a lot of work for them because they would literally have to go through every artist they have and say, okay, that's their library. Yeah. This is how much we get. This is how much they get. And they'd have to do that for all of them. So that would be a lot of work. Not that it wouldn't be a great idea.
Would facilitate their accounting process. And
it would facilitate their accounting process. It would probably get rid of half their accounting department. So it might be a project they'd undertake, but interim, they could jump on right away and they would just collect money, and then they would handle it on their end, who got how much and whatnot.
Okay.
But that would give them access to our platform, therefore our users, and our users obviously would have access to this huge library of music. Meanwhile, regular artists who aren't on a library or with a label or anything like that will still be able to participate, and they will be on a level playing field. They will be able to get into this platform, and their music is not ranked any higher or lower than anybody else's.
Speaking of which, one of the features that is often mentioned with regards to Imusify is this downvoting and upvoting and basically human curation of music.
Yes.
Can you maybe expand a little bit on that?
I could do that, but then I would be jumping out of the middle of the streaming story.
Okay. Let's continue in the streaming story and go to
we'll go back to that right after.
Yeah.
So the artist, now he's uploaded his stuff. Yeah. Our platform has verified that it's his, or at least that when he uploads his music, he's asked who owns it.
Yeah.
Right? Is it all you? Is it you and two friends who recorded this together? What's their stake? Right, in percentage terms, that kind of thing. Was there, do you owe anything, like in percentages to a manager or an agent? You have to document that when you upload the music. Now you can, as an artist, just say, here's my breakdown, right? And use this for all my uploads, if you like. Our platform then takes the piece that you upload, verifies that it's unique, and it doesn't have any copyrighted stuff in it. If it does, it'll just say, hey, we've noticed you've got 3 seconds of this Jay-Z tune in your song. Are you going to credit Jay-Z, or do you want to take the chance that he doesn't care? So this is huge when you're dealing with people who are creating mixes.
Yeah.
Right? Because for them it's a pain to sit there. How much of that our system will tell you. This is how much of this music you use, this is how much of this music is. So you might get a list of 20 songs that are all part of your mix. And it will tell you 1%, 3%, 2%, 5%. And you can figure out how you want to handle it, either by saying, okay, well, I'm just going to let you store that for me, Imusify, and then when these guys log in, the money will just go to them. Cool. Meanwhile, I still get my 10% because I put it all together.
Yeah, cool.
So the artist has done this. So we now have all the content on our network. It has a smart contract attached to it. To get to the content, you have to go through the smart contract. The smart contract just says, this is how much it costs to play this for a stream. This is how much it costs to buy it, so you can download it to your device and keep it forever. And this is how much, or this is how you go about, in some cases it'll be this is how much, in other cases it'll be talk to the artist, if you want to license it to use in a video or something like that, right? That's all in that smart contract. So no one gets to it for free, right? The user comes in, they simply go into their player as part of our app, and they say, I want to listen to such and such an artist. All that music comes up. The minute they hit play on that piece, their wallet sends a micropayment to that contract, the price of a play.
So it's not like they actually have to deal with some smart contracts. They just press play and everything is in the background.
Everything happens in the background. They never see they'll see the the top corner will probably have a little icon there that tells you how much internal currency you've got, and they'll see it go down by 1 decimal. Click. Oh wow! Look at that! I saw that. And they're listening to music, and the next song they play, tick. Another will go down, and they can keep playing as long as they have money in their wallet. They can keep playing. They also, of course, can interact with it in other ways, which is what you brought up earlier. So they may go to this piece of music, they listen to it, they go, wow, this is amazing, and they share it with a friend because you got to listen to this tune, or maybe they have a whole crowd of friends. You got to listen to this tune. We don't, unlike regular social networks, on Imusify, social networking is not free. You pay to post.
Why would somebody be happy about this?
Well,
as a user, how do you benefit from something like that?
You benefit for several reasons. One, people will now think twice about posting.
Meaning that there is no
They will
spam.
not. Well, it's not that there won't be no spam. Spam will be minimized
Because it's costly.
because it's costly. Exactly. So you're not going to send out 10,000 messages to everybody on the thing because that will actually cost you significant money, like money that is, some people's wages for a week.
Can you imagine? Is it really that much, or are we talking? Because probably it doesn't make sense. One post $1 would probably be a bit.
No,
much.
it would. Yeah, one post $1 is expensive. We're looking at the sort of the 10-cent range to do a post. Like that's an original post, and then doing things like commenting would be in the 2-cent range. Liking would be in a 0.2-cent range. Downvoting, we're allowing it. We don't like the idea so much because even in and of itself, it sucks.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to say I don't like something, you really ought to say why.
Yeah.
So with downvoting, it's both a downvote and a comment. So if you don't comment, you don't get the downvote. We just ignore you.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. But can they somehow recoup this? Do only artists make money, or can
Well, no.
users
See, that's the thing. The guy who posts, right? That money goes to what he was posting about. So if he's posting about an artist, then that 10 cents goes to the artist.
Whole 10 cents, or is there?
Well, there's a transaction fee that we charge just to keep everything up and running. The software has to keep evolving and growing. So we take a 2% transaction fee. So of that 10 cents, 9.8 goes to the artist this person is posting about. Now the commenter who pays 2 cents, for example, to comment, and this is just arbitrary numbers I'm pulling out of my head here.
Of course.
But he pays 2 cents to comment. That 2 cents. 196 of that 2 cents, 1.96 cents, goes to the person who created the post.
So the poster also earns. So basically, whenever you interact with the platform, you have to spend something to interact with it.
Right.
But if it's a quality post or whatever kind of content, and somebody else likes or interacts with it, you're also the one who's getting paid.
Exactly. So if your post that you put up there generates huge feedback and lots of discussion, you're going to do very well, thank you very much, because your 10 cents is going to turn into $25 or $100. We don't know. I mean, if it's a really popular story, it could go on forever. Now there's a trickle up effect. So when the person commented on your post, you got some of that 1.96 cents, and then the rest of it went to the person you were posting about. So an artist who creates a piece of music,
they're the ones who ultimately benefit by far the most, even if
they benefit by scale.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not getting a big chunk of that. The person who paid 2 cents to comment and 1.96 cents went to the poster. Of that, probably about 0.5 cents then goes to the artist, because it was the post that generated the interest. The post was about the artist, so the artist should get a little bit, but they shouldn't get the lion's share because the poster was the person who did the eloquent story that generated the interest. Not to mention, the artist is going to do just fine, thank you very much, because if this is a really popular article, then it's not just people reading it and commenting on it. They're going to go listen to the music, right? But there's a whole scope of potential there for people who aren't musicians to make money as pundits, as curators of playlists, which is another form of thing. You can create a playlist on our platform and then share the playlist with people. And if people play the playlist, then you're getting a small compensation for the fact that they're playing it, because when they play your playlist, we charge them the price for each of the songs in the playlist that they play, plus a small premium on that because they're using your playlist service. That premium goes to you.
So it's essentially incentivizing people to create good shareable content.
As much as possible. Create good content as much as possible. People who create negative content are going to be very surprised by what happens, because they're going to pay to create the negative content and nobody's going to engage it.
In a sense, I mean, if I understand correctly, in either case, the platform will reward people for creating something others engage with.
Right.
Even if it's a flame war, as they call it.
Even a flame war. But the thing is that we're not rewarding you for good or bad.
We're rewarding you for what other people see as valuable and are willing to spend on, basically.
You're adding value to the economy. What is an economy? It's people exchanging. That's literally what an economy is. People exchanging, right? Bearing in mind here that when you add to the community, everyone can see it. So you're actually adding to your reputation as well. But if what you add creates engagement, then you've improved the value of the network to other people, right? Well, when you do that, you should be rewarded for that. Much like if you do something, say, tasteless on the network, you should be punished for that by the economy. Well, that's my point. This is not about us deciding that was bad. It's about the economy deciding it was bad.
And that's essentially the idea of this distributed model, which is why it's more like a community rather than a corporation.
Oh, it is very much. It's a community. The corporation, Imusify, is not quote-unquote run it. It runs itself. The way we're building this, it's going to run itself. What we do is provide the tool to interact with it.
Meaning the software solutions, essentially.
The software, exactly. We're going to be a software company.
Imusify is building the distributed music economy. People come in en masse, speaking, millions, potentially billions of people, like the whole world using Imusify platform to do that.
Right.
How do you solve the problem of scalability there? Isn't this the limitation of blockchain that you mentioned before?
It is. It's a limitation in terms of transaction capacity. Like I use the word capacity because it's not just about how many transactions you can execute in a second, but also how big can those transactions be. So it's half about speed and half about file size.
Okay.
What we're trying to build here is a way of using what they call sidechain technology, which is, in our world, is going to mean that every device that is connected to our environment, or our network, if you will have its own personal chain.
So every node, or node are these computers within the system, right?
Yeah, I hesitate to use the word node because in blockchain world, a node is somebody who's got a complete copy of the entire blockchain. And you won't have a complete copy of the entire blockchain. You will have a copy of yours.
So in our case, we would call them something else, like agents? Or
yeah, I would say it's more like an agent chain.
Agent chain.
Right. It's basically this chain has everything you've done. And it's secured, just like a blockchain is, in the same way that a blockchain is, but it has a communications protocol that allows it to talk to a larger scale chain that acts as a validator.
And this one is the one that you said is running on Neo?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the local one could run on a small version, a light version of Neo as well. But the master one, that one is not going to have all the interactions that are happening on the network. Most of that is going to be stored either locally on the local chain, or if it's files like, say, music or videos, it'll be stored on a distributed file system. All the meaty stuff is actually on the local chains. It's on the local chain of the person listening, it's on the local chain of the artist who uploaded the music.
So that's the idea of this distributed storage system. That's
Exactly.
why we don't need to put files on the actual master blockchain.
No, all that's on the blockchain, it will be the source ID of the device that listened to the music, the source ID of the device that created or owned the music, the ID of the contract, and the transaction number.
So essentially, it really is only a ledger. They're used for auditing to...
Exactly. I mean, the logic of the auditing contract because there will be a smart contract on there. It'll be a fairly involved one because it'll handle all scenarios between chains, between local chains. But the concept behind it is that it does the validation, which is running the program, but that's not the transaction that has to actually be stored. What has to be stored is just a very small piece of data that says, this was validated, these were the 2 parties involved, or 3 or 5 parties involved, and it happened, right? If you want any details, go look on those chains, because it'll be on the local chains of all the parties involved.
Okay, understood. When I think of this idea, it seems like it's integrating so many things that were in and of itself products, some of them like very successful ones. Yeah, we've got distributed file storage, much like, for example, BitTorrent.
Yeah.
We have...
in fact, very much like BitTorrent. Very, very close to BitTorrent.
Okay, in terms of technology.
In terms of the underlying file transfer, file hosting protocols, almost identical.
Okay, you have, SoundCloud, Spotify-ish function
services,
there, streaming services. Then we also have crowdfunding, like Indiegogo and
yeah. But if you think about it,
Kickstarter.
Right? If you've got this guy sitting here with his node and he's an artist and he wants to crowdfund, well, if he's on our network, he's connected to the entire crowd, and all he needs to do, from our perspective, is much like what you would do in a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo. You set up a project and you say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I want to do it. These are the parties involved. This is how much money it's going to cost and where the money's going to go. It's going to go to session musician X, Y, and Z. It's going to go to studio B, and it's going to go to me to keep me fed while I'm spending a week or two in studio and I don't have a job.
Time for pizza money.
Right. Pizza, beer money. Up front, admit it. Right. I mean, why not? Right. People understand you got to eat. And so maybe you want, I don't know, $50,000. So you say, okay, and this is my project. Here's all the details about it, who's involved, everything else, what we're going to do, the kind of music we're looking for, maybe even, hey, here's the lyrics we're going to have. And that's your promotional Kickstarter page, if you will. And then you tack on a crowdfund, right? I want to crowdsource the funding for this thing, and you say this is the target amount of money. And you offer whatever it is you're going to offer. In the Kickstarter model, you might offer free copies of the music once it's produced. What's wrong with that? You could say, I want if everybody who donates $10 gets a free copy of the music the minute it's done, and maybe I'm going to put in $10. But if you've got 5,000 fans who all pitch in, you're funded, right? They all put in $10, and granted, those 5,000 fans have now pre-purchased the music, so you don't have them to sell it to anymore.
Of course.
But now, hopefully, you have follow-on.
If the music is good and if they share it, then it spreads.
Exactly. Then all of a sudden you're in great shape.
That's also very good for facilitating the expansion of the network, since it's the artist is incentivized to bring on not only their fans but also studios, because it would really make this process very simple.
Which is why we have the concept of the consumer and the concept of the artist on the platform, but we also have the concept of the collaborator. Right.
Which basically means everybody else, venues, studios.
Pretty much everybody who doesn't get up on stage.
Okay.
And even a few of them that do, but they aren't the front man, or they aren't the named band.
Like the roadies.
Yeah, roadies. You have session drummers, right? Maybe your drummer for your band doesn't like to do live, so you get a session drummer to come in, right? And he's on stage, but he's not the star. He's not even related to the star technically. So those are we consider those to be collaborators. But also, as you said, it could be A&R experts, it could be marketing experts, it could be agents, managers, tour managers, roadies, as you said. Yeah, all of those guys, they have a place, and we want to make sure we have a place for them in this marketplace. And then, of course, we have the venue, which is a special case.
Okay, but there's one question I have with this regard. I mean, as soon as you offer crowdfunding and all of this potential to create some revenue and to get funding, you also create the potential for frauds. How do we approach solving that problem?
People join our network, they have to go through KYC.
So basically, it's not anonymous network.
No,
it's a network of
you must
actual
disclose
beings.
Who you are, where you live, and prove it with formal identification and things like a utility bill or whatever.
But are you afraid of GDPR and all of that stuff, because it can complicate everything quite a bit?
Yes, it would. What we're doing is an arm's length relationship with a GDPR compliant company.
So meaning that the third party service does the KYC, confirms somebody is somebody, and we don't ever collect their information per se.
We don't collect it, no. We will never hold it. That's as you said. So when a person registers for our network, they will be guided through a process that is actually running on this third party provider. They will validate, we will get a key back that says, yep, they passed. And this is their locator number. And that locator number will be part of their local chain. So it's only on their device. Now, bear in mind that their local chain is also copied into other devices on other nodes, so that there's always a backup in case you lose your phone or something like that. Because otherwise, you just lost your blockchain.
No more funds, no more anything.
No, you got to start over again, right? So we make sure that doesn't happen. But that person is now uniquely identifiable. We never disclose that information on the network. All we know about you is in terms of the software. is that this is your username, whichever username you picked.
So it's like, it could be a pseudonym, it could be a random
any
set
name
of
you
numbers.
like, we don't care what the name is. It could be a random set of numbers. And that's your username for connecting to the network. And it has attached to itself is a key that points to a record at the third party's database. They keep that record forever, but they don't disclose it to anybody. They're fully GDPR compliant, and they're basically in the business of keeping identity records linked to keys. So, perfect relationship to have. We take that key and put it on your record on your device. That is the identity that you have on our platform. It is not the identity you interact with on our platform. We ask you to then create an identity as a consumer.
That would be your account, basically.
That would be, so this is your account, but you don't disclose your account to anybody. It is the thing that lets you connect to the network and proves to the network you actually exist as a single human being on the planet. If you try to go in now, after you've gone through this process, and sign up again under a different name, you'll be rejected, unless you happen to have a utility bill under a different name and
like several passports and
under a different name.
So James Bond could have 7 accounts.
James Bond could have 7 accounts, and we'll figure that one out pretty soon. Because there's all sorts of AI analytics that are possible once you've got enough social content happening. But the James Bonds of the world aren't a concern. It's the guys who set up 1,000 different identities on a social network and then start spamming or manipulating situations. You won't be able to do that on our platform because you have to prove you are a unique individual on the planet before you get an account. Once you've got an account, you can set up multiple personas depending on what you want to do. You'll always have a consumer persona because everyone listens to music.
It sounds like you have everything figured out. Just a few more questions. So we have the identities. We have the issue of scalability mitigated as far as the technology of to date allows,
as much
basically.
As we can, yes.
Yeah. So there is a lot of these interesting solutions that can be implemented, but in a sense, you're combining like 5 or 6 products that could be standalone products, and each of them, has been a successful startup before, but it took time to get to that place.
Right.
How long do you imagine it will take to actually deploy the platform? How far are you with the development and all that?
We're still at the architecture stage on the development. We've built some facing applications that don't rely on our architecture because we can't, right? We can't go, we need to, the team that we need to build to execute this thing is why we're doing the ICO, right? So we get the ICO, which is going to be August 1 and hopefully finished August 2. And then we get the team together and we build these underlying components. Right now the demo runs on Neo Testnet.
There is actually a demo out there, some kind of prototype already.
Yeah, there's already a demo, but it's more about us coming up with ways of doing the look and feel, and some general basic interaction with a chain, just as a proof of concept.
And that's that interaction with the chain, that underlying smart contract, is essentially what we've been awarded the City of Zion.
Yes,
award,
that award came from that particular. Well, we've evolved it since the award, but it is the same app that won the award. The point for us is that what we need to build to make this work at scale, and really we do not want to be build it now cheap and then figure out how to make it scalable later. We'd rather build it scalable right now. So what we're trying to do here is that's the demo site is using a traditional DApp model. It's a website against a single chain. When we go to this multi-chain concept, we have to actually build that architecture. No one's done it yet. And now we know how to do it. We just don't have the resources to do it. Once we've got those resources to do it, then we build that infrastructure. Then we start layering on the feature set because it all becomes about the user interface. The contracts and the nature of the programs on the chain are actually really simple. It's just how are we going to use them?
Basically, this development and especially speed of development, since getting to the market as soon as possible is that important. That's probably the reason for the 25 million hard cap.
It is. We need to build a team quickly. We need to build the developers themselves. We need to build a DevOps environment. If you happen to know, if not, Google what DevOps is. But we need a really good one because we need to be able to iterate quickly.
But you already do have partners.
Sorry?
You already do have partners in development from CTO.
Oh yeah. We've got people ready and on deck, but we really need to take them full time, and by full time I mean 160 hours a week.
Yeah, of course, the startup full time.
So that's why we need the 25 mil. The key thing for our token holders, though, is that aside from the value of the token and whatever happens to it on the marketplace, which we don't know what's going to happen. We hope it goes to the moon, but it'll do what it does. Whatever that happens, the one added benefit is the people who buy the token from the crowd sale, they're going to be our beta testers.
So they will basically enjoy all the benefits in terms of getting all the updates first.
They get all the updates first.
Have some sort of like VIP on the platform.
They will be coming. They will be given access to our tracking environment, so that they can add in when they have an issue or they have a problem. They can put it in there, and we can investigate it, find out what we need to tweak to make it better. We're going to get them involved in the process of building the platform. So we're hoping for lots of people with either music industry expertise or music industry love, passion, or people with blockchain, or not even blockchain, just technological passion, right? Because the blockchain is just one of the tools we're using, right? And
there's peer-to-peer networks.
Peer-to-peer networking. There's a whole concept of local client server that we're going to be implementing. We're not going to have a web app. Our app will be desktop, mobile, and they will be standalone apps, because there's going to be a lot of stuff running in that app that you can't run off a web page.
Okay, interesting.
Right.
One last question before we wrap up. Do you have any specific involvement with music?
As you well know, and you're just being rhetorical and asking this question for the audience. Yeah, I was a singer up until about 3 or 4 years ago. I've just gotten so busy with other things that I've just let it slide. But I've been in several bands starting in the 80s.
Big Led Zeppelin fan.
I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan, but I'm also a fan of a lot of the 80s music, and I love Pearl Jam and the Soundgarden, and so that 90s grunge feel, and even some modern stuff I'm all over.
What is currently on your playlist, for example?
Currently Disturbed is really working for me. I'm getting back into Shinedown, which is for the 2000s rather than the 2010s. Yeah, I mean, and of course I'm still a huge fan of Max Webster, but you guys have never heard of Max Webster.
No, that was
Canadian band way back.
What makes you personally most excited about this project? Because
well,
essentially at the moment you're not directly paid, so why would you stay on a project like this with your expertise?
I initially got in because it was a chance for me to apply what I'd learned, and obviously to learn more. Having gone through this role, I now am most excited about building this ecosystem. Is it the idea of just out there having fun, and the music industry, you can't avoid having fun in this business. And I suspect that while this road trip has been a little intense, that there are going to be opportunities for us as we go forward, where we're going to be able to get up on stage and not just show PowerPoints. We're going to bring up a guitar player, a drummer, and have a little fun.
I can't wait. I can't wait to do this again. I also kind of slipped on music.
I think you and I could have some real fun with harmonies.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the opportunity.
All right.
Okay, so that was Marc Aniballi talking about Imusify project and the underlying technology. And thank you very much for the conversation.
Pleasure, Lucas.
Thank you.
Cheers.